This is part 2 of the path to Audiating Interval Identity, a structured series designed to rebuild your perception from the ground up. So last week in part 1, we began with the emotional response. This is the immediate involuntary reaction your body has when an interval hits you. That reaction is real, but it is only the first layer of perception. Emotion is the doorway into hearing, but it is not stable enough to identify intervals consistently. It is simply where we begin. Today, we move to the next 2 layers, character and then identity. Character describes how an interval behaves inside a musical context. Identity is the invariant pitch distance that allows you to recognize an interval instantly, regardless of instrument, register, or harmony. The progression is linear. Emotion, character, identity. Emotion is not the interval. Emotion is your reaction. Again, it is not the interval. A major triad may sound bright or stable. You may feel that. A minor triad may feel somber or sad. But we can change the context. So if I play a major triad over a pedal point, that pedal point creates dissonance with the major triad. It changes it. The emotional meaning shifts. The character shifts. This is still a major triad, but when you add that pedal point, you change the context, the interval changes. So the emotional meaning shifts, the character shifts, the interval itself does not. And we're talking about chords now, so there's multiple intervals within a chord. So what happens if we change the register? Here's a major triad. What if I play it down here? Same major triad. How about up here? How about here? Something changes. If you change the timbre, you change the instrument, that will also affect the character, and it might also affect your emotional response to it. So if emotion can change while the interval stays the same, then emotion cannot be the interval. Auditory neuroscience supports this. Emotional valence is shaped by timbre, register, and to a large degree, cultural associations, not by interval structure alone. Emotion is the doorway, not the definition. So let's talk about how an interval behaves in context. Character is the experience of the interval inside its context. It requires context, and it changes within context. It's a major triad. Also a major triad. Even small changes like this, arpeggiating from bottom to top or top to bottom, it alters the character. Traditional ear training methods focus heavily on character. Some will focus on the first stage, emotion. This is why many musicians will plateau eventually. Character is perceptual shading, not structural identity. So character can include an openness or closeness, the sense of tilt or vault, how wide the interval is, the tension and expected resolution, timbral texture, what instrument is playing it, cultural associations. And we have to talk about that for a moment because cultural variation matters. In some musical cultures, a perfect fifth does not sound stable. It sounds hollow or unresolved. But in a lot of Western culture, it does sound stable. That's culture. A perfect fifth may sound open. How do you perceive it? Is it open? What about a minor second? It may feel tight. What's your perception of it? What about a major seventh? It may feel stretched. You can tell there's a wide distance, and it feels stretched because of that dissonance. When you combine emotion and character and you approach recognition, that's what's happening. You're getting closer to recognition when you combine emotion and character. Two solid things that together make your ear a little more reliable, but you still haven't reached identity, and that's where we're going. Character always moves when the context moves. Let's do this real quick. I'm going to play two intervals. Do not name them, don't count. Simply decide, same identity or different identity. Pretty easy for most of us. If you hesitated though, character interfered. If we change the instrument, character can interfere. If I played this perfect fifth on the piano, and then I played it on another instrument, it would be a brief moment where you'd actually pay attention to that character and it would interfere with your ability to identify it. What if we change the harmony? If I play a major triad, and then let's say I add a little melody above it. That changes it. The non-chord tone changes a character. This is why in real music, we tend to lose something. Everything that you do can shift the character. This is why ear training apps feel easy. They're probably not completely easy, but they're easier to get into. But real music feels so difficult. Many apps, they train character in controlled conditions. Music doesn't live in controlled conditions. And this is why real music breaks most ear training. Most ear training systems, they'll fail because they train intervals in sterile, perfectly controlled conditions. Real music is not sterile. It is full of acoustic variability, changes in timbre, register, articulation, tuning, environmental noise. All of these things affect the quality of whatever it is you're training. And when you train in a pristine environment, you learn to recognize character in a pristine environment. So early units of my Flawless course, they include acoustic variability by design. I let it happen. Exposure to imperfect conditions strengthens perceptual generalization. When the ear encounters the same interval across many different contexts, it becomes better at extracting the one feature that never moves. The spacing, the distance. If we play a major triad, and then I do this in the background, can you still hear that major triad? It's harder to hear because you haven't trained the ability to actually recognize distance. Ear training primarily, not all ear training, but ear training primarily focuses on character, which is an important step. That gets you about 70% there. But you want to get to that 100%, you now need to take the next step. You need to start training identity. And we're going to talk about how to do that. But if we look at perceptual learning research, it consistently shows that variability accelerates identity formation far more effectively than repetition in idealized conditions. The brain learns to ignore what changes and lock onto what remains constant. This is the beginning of identity. Identity is the part that never moves. If emotion moves and character moves with context, then something must remain constant. Otherwise, interval recognition, chord recognition would be impossible. Identity is the invariant pitch distance between 2 notes, or 3 notes, or a triad. It's what never changes. Here's a perfect fifth. Now listen to this one. Same one, but lower. Now down here. Up here. And up here. Everything changes. That interval changed. It was the same exact C and G on the piano. Everything changed except the distance between the 2 notes, the spacing. If I were to play a perfect fifth harshly, and I try and play it softly, it changes character. If I change the articulation, if I arpeggiate it, it changes the character. If I play it harmonically, it changes the character. If I play it on another instrument, it changes the character. Identity is the one element that does not change. Neuroscience, it supports this. The auditory cortex tracks relative pitch distance even when timbre, loudness, and spectral content vary. Here's a short identity exercise. I'm going to play one note. Notice the emotional reaction and the character. Stage 1, emotional reaction is instant. It's whatever you feel. Maybe you feel nothing. That's still your emotional reaction. And that's one of the problems with emotion. It changes depending on you. Then try and notice a character. What about it in this space? It's not perfect pitch. I'm not training perfect pitch. But what about this note in this space creates a certain effect on you? Listen again. Now, what if I hold that note out? How does it change? If we remove both layers, and I just play this note, between those 3 different options, kind of a mid-length note, a held note, and a short note, what remains is identity, where it sits, higher or lower compared to other notes I could play on the piano. It sits in a certain registral space, and that affects it. So what if I do this? There's that note again. That has 1 character. That has another character. But if we just listen to this objectively, the C sits here, the F sits here, the A sits here. What remains is identity when we take off the emotional response, how it changes the atmosphere of the room. All these things. What remains is identity, where it sits in the registral space. So when we're trying to build identity, we begin with simple intervals. Octave, fifth, fourth. You can just feel that one is further away than another. And if you've never done any type of ear training, you might get this wrong at first. Most of us in the beginning can tell that's an octave. Even more of us would be able to tell these 2 notes are spaced further apart. These 2 are closer. It gets a little bit more subtle if we do the perfect fourth, because the difference between the fifth and the fourth, the spacing, is just a little bit different. You can feel that one is further away than the other. You'll get this wrong at first, possibly, but that's not failure, it's calibration. And identity begins when the ear stops describing the interval and starts measuring the distance. So why we start with fifths and fourths? We start with perfect fifths and perfect fourths because they are structurally foundational in real music. In melodic contour and bass motion, harmonic scaffolding. They are notoriously difficult for beginners to separate because they often sound similar at first. Their similarity is exactly why they are the right place to begin identity training. So here's a perfect fifth and a fourth. You can hear something different about them, but that's character. Can you tell the distance between them? They're close together. It gets harder to measure distance. The more information you have to work with, the more intervals you learn, and the closer they are together. Major and minor seconds are often confused. They both have a sort of quality. And so if you're always going for quality, well, guess what? That's a major second, but it's so low it's hard to tell. That's a minor second. You have to learn to recognize distance, and there's a way to do that. So research actually supports this. Listeners, they tend to confuse intervals with similar spectral spacing or similar harmonic function. Whatever the music is and however it's functioning, you tend to confuse like things. Very common, especially early in training. Fifths and fourths, they sit adjacent in the harmonic series, which is why they blur together perceptually until identity stabilize. So where does all this lead? Emotion and character are how we experience music. Identity is how we recognize it, and they're not always the same thing. Identity is a foundation for hearing intervals inside harmony, inside melodies, and inside real music. In part 3, we test whether your ears begin to separate identity from character inside actual music. Not exercises, but real musical contexts.